I'd definitely say the FMTV series handles a lot better than the old 5-ton deuce and a half.
The steering is a lot more responsive. You can adjust quickly on any terrain.
The FMTV is very spacious compared to the old deuce and a half. It's a lot more accessible.
I much rather prefer the FMTV due to better handling, better performance, better responsiveness.
Very easy to drive. They're very simple, very easy. There's no negotiating. It pretty much drives like a car.
It definitely has enough horsepower. I mean, you can haul just about anything with one of those.
Less strenuous on the body driving an FMTV than it was for the old trucks.
A lot more comfortable than the deuce and a half were.
FMTV is a lot more comfortable to drive. It's a lot easier to see out of them, so you can judge corners a lot better.
Being able to lower your tire pressure and inflate it depending on the terrain gives you a lot better grip on loose terrain.
So I think the FMTV allows you to, accomplish your mission much quicker. I think the FMTV allows you to accomplish your mission much quicker.
Improved ride and handling. Increased power. More comfort. Easy to drive. Higher ground clearance. Increased safety. These are some of the words used by drivers of the FMTV to describe their vehicles. These attributes add up to form a superior vehicle, rugged, dependable, and safe. But as good as the FMTV is, neglecting basic PMCS or ignoring standard safety procedures could put you in a catastrophic situation.
I guess I wasn't paying much attention. Next thing I knew, we were off the road in the ditch.
The FMTV has a better power range as far as I'm concerned. It pulls better. The automatic transmission is pretty much unique. There's no clutching involved. You have a greater visibility. It's pretty much all the way around. The older series, it's very limited. The FMTV by far is a better driving and riding vehicle.
Compared to its predecessors, the FMTV is a far superior vehicle. Its assets include higher ground clearance, tighter turning radius, more power, smoother ride, and greater visibility.
The handling characteristics of the FMTV truck compared to the 939 and the M35A2 is a completely different truck. You can turn the wheel maybe one-handed with the FMTV truck. It takes you two-handed to turn the M35A2.
The FMTV vehicles have much better gauges as far as the driver's accessibility and ease to look at the gauges. The mirrors are easier to adjust, the seat rides better.
While these attributes make the FMTV a superior performer, they can also get you into trouble. These increased capabilities can translate into operators driving at higher speeds in many situations when inappropriate to do so. With the increased performance of the FMTV comes the responsibility of the drivers to treat these vehicles with caution and respect.
The FMTV truck can get you in trouble real quick by overcompensating on your steering, can get you into a skid real quick, tight turning radiuses on it, and you didn't have the tight turning radiuses on the M35 and the 939 Series 5-ton.
The advantages of performing proper PMCS is that you won't have to walk. If you don't check the oil, you don't take care of your vehicle, it won't take care of you.
Before you raise the cab to check engine fluid levels, make sure all loose objects have been removed from the cab. An unsecured wrench or M16 could hit the windshield, damaging or breaking it. Also, make sure no one is standing directly in the path of the cab as it is raised.
Prior to operation of the FMTV, there are a few checks you need to make. You want to check all your air distribution hoses. Make sure the clamps are tight and that it has a little bit of play to allow for closing of the cab. Also check your engine around the seals to make sure there's no leakage. Upon reaching this side, there are a few checks you need to make over here. Make sure you check your boots that lead to your throttle. Make sure the boots are not torn. Make sure that you also check all hoses leading in. Make sure for the same things you did on the other side, the clamps and a little bit of play. You also want to check your fan belts, make sure they're not frayed or torn, and check your fan to make sure it's not broken in any way. You also want to check your engine oil level here. Make sure there are proper levels in there. Check your water fuel separator, make sure there's no water in the bottom of the canister. Check your coolant level, make sure it is between the top of this and the middle of this. Next you want to check your transmission dipstick, make sure the proper level. You can only check that after it's been running. You'll want to check your hydraulic fluid bay, make sure there's no leakage and that the proper amount of fluid is inside.
Check your windshield for any damage. Then, look to see if the windshield wiper blades are in good condition. Make sure your headlights, tail lights, and running lights are all operational. And double check that your load is secure. Before moving out, put on your safety belt, check your gauges, and adjust the mirrors if needed. Finally, as you're moving out, remember to use a ground guide.
Ensure the safety of the truck, the driver, passengers, troops if you're carrying them, because if you overlook something on your PMCS, you could cause damage to the truck, you or your passengers.
We're going to ascend the hill behind me, which is a 29% grade. It's fairly dry. I would recommend to lock the transfer in the mode, second gear. That way you have plenty of power at all times. And descending the hill, I would also recommend the mode position. Come down in second to third gear. That way if you was to break traction and begin to slide, you could match the fuel pedal and keep the truck up with the slide. If you're sliding down the hill, you do not want to lock the brakes up. You have no control. You must keep all the tires spinning. That way you can negotiate with your fuel pedal and your steering wheel. You want to keep light pressure on the brake pedal. You do not want to pump the pedal because you'll run out of air. Therefore, the system will lock up and you'll lose total control of the vehicle.
Before going on any steep incline, you need to make sure that your transmission mode is active, such as all-wheel drive, so that when you're going either on or off the slope, or when you get to the top of it, that if you lose traction with one of the wheels, the other ones you already have them engaged so you don't get in trouble.
Depending on the incline. Normal inclines, small hills, you can drive your FMTV truck in a normal setting in your transmission. They have 1 through 7 gears. If you get to a higher incline, like you're 40% or 60%, you would have to change into a mode to ensure that you have an all-wheel drive, lower your transmission setting to maybe third, second, or first gear, depending on the 60% slope, 40% slope, and just take the hill slowly.
While traveling cross-country, it's possible you may encounter a hill which is too steep to climb. If your wheels start to slip and the vehicle begins to slide, your safest option is to perform a back-down maneuver.
A back-down procedure on an incline is that the first thing you need is a ground guide. If you don't have a ground guide, then you need to get out of the truck, inspect the area behind you that you're backing down to ensure that there's nothing that's going to hurt you or the truck. And back down, keeping a steady pressure on the brake, and try to keep the truck in line as much as possible without making any sharp turns. If you make any sharp turns, you're going to jackknife the truck and a possible rollover will happen.
Before operating FMTV on a side slope, you need to make sure that your CTIS setting is in highway. Any other setting would put more roll into the vehicle and cause it to become more unstable.
The FMTV is designed to navigate a 30% side slope. Certain variations, such as the van, have a higher center of gravity and therefore are less stable on side slopes. It's important to remember that as your load increases, your center of gravity becomes higher, making your vehicle less stable and more likely to roll. While it's best to avoid side slopes whenever possible, there may be times in off-road situations where they're unavoidable. Put your CTIS in highway mode. This will make the sidewalls of your tires flex less, making your FMTV more stable. Move slowly, using a ground guide if at all possible. If you feel that the FMTV is beginning to slide or that the side slope is becoming too steep, turn the vehicle downhill until you reach a safe area. Do not turn your vehicle uphill, as this makes it unstable and subject to a rollover. While driving, remember that the load in your FMTV is going to greatly affect how your truck handles. We've seen that an unloaded FMTV can traverse a more severe side slope than a loaded one. This because as the load increases, the center of gravity becomes higher, making the vehicle less stable. This translates directly to driving the FMTV every day on roads and highways. The heavier and higher your load becomes, the more the handling characteristics of the vehicle deteriorate. A curve taken every day at 40 miles an hour in an unloaded FMTV could turn into a rollover situation if done at the same speed when fully loaded. Simply stated, more weight and height equals lower vehicle performance limits. Be safe and keep it slow. If you used to drive the M35A2 or M939, you'll notice that the FMTV is much easier to turn. Its turning radius is much tighter. While this makes the FMTV easier to maneuver, it can also be dangerous if not adjusted for while driving. As this M35A2 moves through a slalom course at 25 miles an hour, notice how much the test driver must turn the steering wheel back and forth to maneuver through the cones. On the other hand, the FMTV test driver has to turn the wheel much less to complete the same course. It's easy to see that the steering response on the FMTV is much more efficient. If you previously drove the M35A2 or M939, you need to practice responding to demanding driving situations with a lighter touch. Until you become familiar with its specific driving characteristics, use additional caution while operating the FMTV. Overconfidence and lack of attention could contribute to you drifting onto the shoulder of a road while on a mission. If this occurs, do not overreact and do not jerk the steering wheel back towards the road. This could cause the FMTV to overturn. Instead, ease off the accelerator and avoid braking hard. As you gain control of the vehicle, ease it back onto the road using slight turns of the steering wheel. Once safely back on the road, you can accelerate back to speed. Keep in mind that the improved performance and comfort of the FMTV make it possible to drive at a higher rate of speed with less effort. It is important that you observe posted speed limits, keeping in mind your load, the weather conditions, and adjusting accordingly. Additionally, make sure there is enough distance between you and the vehicle you are following. The general rule is to have at least 3 seconds distance between you and the next vehicle. But in adverse weather such as rain or snow, or when transporting a heavy load, this distance must be increased. You must also be aware of the sensitivity of the FMTV's braking system. Braking when lightly loaded or empty on wet pavement can lead to wheel lockup. As always, use light, steady pressure on the brakes and don't pump them. Before hitting the road, there are a few more things you should know about the safe operation of various FMTVs. Whenever backing any FMTV, with or without a trailer, use at least one ground guide, 2 if possible.
Always have a ground guide. Ensure the ground guide knows what he's doing. He knows the proper arm and hand signals.
And while backing the vehicle, you never want to lose sight of your trailer to avoid possible jackknife and damage to the tractor or trailer.
Always keep the trailer in your line of sight. Never lose the sight of the trailer. Always ensure that there's nothing behind you that you can back into.
If you're operating the dump truck, never dump the load if the vehicle is parked on a side slope. As the bed of the FMTV is raised, this also raises its center of gravity. If done on a side slope, this higher center of gravity could cause the truck to roll over. You know that the van has a higher center of gravity than other variants of the FMTV. Because of this, you need to be more cautious in day-to-day operations, particularly when off-road and on side slopes.
Anytime you're loading the FMTV van, you want to make sure that you load with your heaviest objects as low as you can in the van, because that affects the center of gravity, which could cause an inadvertent rollover.
Simply place the heaviest items on the bottom when loading the van. This will help keep the center of gravity down and decrease the chances of a rollover. When operating the M1088 tractor trailer, it's vital you use the correct position of the fifth wheel at all times. When coupling and uncoupling from the trailer and while driving with the trailer, the fifth wheel must be in its most forward position. Only when loading ships or airplanes should the fifth wheel be moved to its rearward position. Failure to adhere to these guidelines will cause damage to your FMTV. As you have seen, the FMTV is a superior performer. To stay safe and to get the most from your vehicle, remember the following. PMCS is the single most important thing you need to do in order to keep your FMTV safe. Take care of your vehicle, and it will take care of you. When ascending or descending steep hills, lock your transfer into mode. When braking, use light, even pressure and do not pump the brakes. If stuck ascending a hill, do not attempt to turn the vehicle around. Instead, perform a back-down procedure using a ground guide. On side slopes, make sure your CTIS is set on highway. To escape a side slope which is too steep, turn the FMTV downhill. Be alert to the impact of loads on your FMTV. The greater the load, the more vehicle performance is affected negatively. Don't overreact. Using too much steering wheel input or braking could cause you to lose control. Keep plenty of distance between you and the vehicle you are following. In adverse conditions or when off-road, increase these distances accordingly. Always use ground guides when backing the FMTV. Remember, when you climb behind the wheel of your FMTV, you become a manager of two things, time and space. In order to effectively manage both, it is important that you become completely familiar with the operational characteristics of your vehicle. Professional drivers are constantly aware of their speed, road conditions, and the distance to objects around them. This allows them to effectively manage their reaction time as the space between their vehicle and the closest object decreases. Using common sense, observing posted speeds, and becoming familiar with the capabilities and limitations of your FMTV will make you an effective manager of time and space, and will allow you to become an effective, much-needed asset in today's Army.
Well, I've never gotten an FMTV stuck. I've got a do stuck many a time.
You can get in any type of situation, change your tire pressure, and it'll move right on. You ain't got to worry about nothing.